Happy Canada Day, everyone. I figured it's time for another video, so filming from my office here this morning. And thinking about Canada Day, I've just been thinking about what is the greatest thing that we can do for our nation as Catholics? And the answer is very simple. It's that we would become saints. Jesus used that example in the gospel about being leaven in society. And so what does that mean? It means that we are his special instruments to help evangelize the world in which we live. And so just as a little bit of leaven causes the whole batch of dough to rise, our presence, bringing the presence of Christ to the world, actually hopefully allows others to rise up in faith. That's what is needed in our time. We need to be saints and help inspire others to be saints. And so with that, I want to share a little story I read in the National Catholic Register, an online publication in the States. And it's the story about Carlo Acutis. So Carlo Acutis was an Italian teenager who died back in 2006, and his cause for canonization is continuing on. He will be declared a blessed in October. They're going to have the celebration in Assisi, Italy. And his story, it's amazing. It's an amazing story. And so a miracle has been attributed to his intercession in Christ before the Father. And so he will be beatified. And as you know, that is one of the steps. It's actually the second last step before his canonization. So the next step for him to be canonized, a saint, where we'll be able to call him Saint Carlo, is that another miracle will be attributed to his intercession. But the miracle that allowed his cause to go forward for the celebration of beatification happened to a little boy in Brazil. And they're basically the parish priest there announced that they would be doing a novena asking for Carlo Acutis' intercession. And so this was back in 2013. And so what the parish priest there did, he had everyone come forward before the altar and to name out loud what they would be praying for. And so this little boy came forward, and this little boy had a congenital defect in his pancreas. And basically, he couldn't eat solid foods. He could never eat solid foods. He couldn't keep any solid foods down. And so when he came forward, he announced that his prayer intention was that he would, so that he could stop vomiting. So he was asking Carlo Acutis' intercession for him to stop vomiting, because that must have been a daily part of his life. It's just, I can't even imagine. I hate throwing up. Imagine that every day, probably. And so he named the intention. He went home, and 3 days later, he discovered that he could eat solid foods. Isn't that amazing? And he went to the doctors. They examined his pancreas, and they discovered that the defect that was present was totally gone, and his pancreas was totally healed and looked like a normal pancreas, which is, in fact, a miracle. And so this is the miracle that allows Carlo's beatification process to take place, and his canonization process to continue. And so it's amazing. So I was reading about Carlo, and Carlo, he was a boy from very early ages. He had a relationship with the Lord. He came to know the Lord early on in his life, and it wasn't because his parents were practicing their faith a lot. In fact, they didn't practice very much at all. Carlo's mother admitted that, when Carlo began to ask questions and to be very interested in his faith at the age of 3 and 4, she had been to church maybe 3 times in her life. And he had these very deep questions, which forced Carlo's parents to do some research and slowly start getting into their faith. So Carlo had a great love for the Lord and a great love for the Eucharist. And he would always insist when they passed the church that they would go in and say hello to the Lord and to pray. Carlo had many great loves. So when he grew up, he enjoyed basketball, he loved karate, he loved skiing, he loved canoeing. But his great love was computer programming. He loved computer programming. And so he learned how to program in many different styles of programming. I don't know anything about it, so I'm not good at any of that stuff. So, but he was. And so one of the things that he made was a website, and he developed it for 4 years, and it was on Eucharistic miracles in the world. And he had done such a great job on this website that actually became an exhibit that traveled the world. So it was pretty amazing. And he had a great love for the poor, so he would always try and help the poor in any way that he could. He would go to Mass daily. So he received his first Holy Communion at the age of 7, and he received special permission to do that. But he would go to Mass every day. He would attend Eucharistic adoration when he could. But he was also very open to people. That's the lie that most people believe, that if you spend time with God and more time that you spend with God, that somehow you're going to be alienated from other people. You're going to not think about people as much, and that's the opposite. It actually opens us to people. And so he had many friends, many friends that he would reach out to, and he had this magnetic personality, and so he loved being with people, and he loved being with the Lord, and he was always with the Lord in whatever he was doing, taking the Lord with him in all of his activities. A real powerful example. Carlo believed that sadness came when people turn inward on themselves, but happiness comes when we turn to God. Isn't that true? It's so beautiful, and it is true. So Carlo, in 2006, was diagnosed with acute leukemia, and he was given 3 days to live. Imagine that. What a shock. And yet, what did Carlo do? He said that he would offer up his sufferings for the Pope and the Church, and he died. But immediately after his death, there were so many people who were claiming that miracles occurred from his intercession. So they were asking Carlo to pray for them, and they were receiving these miracles. At his funeral, there were so many people, and his parents were shocked because there were so many people they didn't know, but Carlo, their son, had touched their lives in some way. And so there was many people at the funeral. One of the things that he would love to say was that all of us are born as originals, but many of us die as photocopies. And so we're called to be original because God created us as unique images of him. And so by turning to him, every day we become more and more the people he has called us to be. And that is very attractive for our world. And so like I said, on Canada Day, what is the one thing that we're really called to do as Catholics to help our nation? Is that we would become saints. And so for all of you listening, I just want to encourage you with your continued prayers, praying for you, for all the people in the nursing homes. The Lord loves you. The Lord loves you. Keep going. For all of the young people, for the children who are preparing for their sacraments, I want to encourage you as well to not be afraid to come to the Lord, that he has an amazing plan for your life, and to desire to become saints. Just like Carlo, ask for Carlo's intercession for the saints that you have chosen, your patron saints. Ask for their intercession for you. And for all of us, that we would, become saints. That's what's going to change our world. Saint Catherine of Siena, I believe, said, "If you are what you should be, you will set the world ablaze with his love." And so, my brothers and sisters, I hope you have a wonderful Canada Day, and let's open our hearts to set the world ablaze with the love of Christ. God bless. Bye.